John Lennon saved his family from the U.S. government against all odds. New York City, 1972, the Dakota Building, a fortress of old-world grandeur overlooking Central Park. But even within its thick walls, John Lennon felt the chill of a relentless, unseen enemy. The year was 1972. John Lennon was no longer just a rock star. He was a political target. His anti-war activism, his outspoken criticism of the Nixon administration, his very presence in America was deemed a threat. The U.S. government, under President Richard Nixon, had launched a covert operation to deport him, not for any real crime, but for a minor 1968 drug conviction in London, a convenient legal hook to silence a powerful voice. John, Yoko, and their daughter, Kyoko, Yoko's child from a previous marriage, whom John adored, lived under a constant cloud of surveillance. Every phone call was tapped, every visitor was noted, every public appearance was scrutinized. The FBI, the INS, Immigration and Naturalization Service, even the CIA, all were part of a coordinated effort to make John Lennon a man without a country. But the true target wasn't just John, it was his family. His wife, Yoko, an avant-garde artist and activist in her own right, was deemed equally dangerous, and the constant threat of deportation hung over them like a guillotine. John knew the stakes. If he was deported, he would be separated from Yoko, who was fighting her own custody battle for Kyoko. The thought of losing his family, of being torn apart by a government that saw him as nothing more than a nuisance, filled him with a cold dread. He was a Beatle, a legend, but against the might of the U.S. government, but he felt like a lone man fighting an invisible war. And in 1972, as the deportation battle intensified, John Lennon had no idea just how close he was to losing everything. Richard Nixon hated John Lennon. He saw Lennon as everything wrong with America's youth, rebellious, anti-establishment, and dangerously influential. Lennon's calls for peace, his protests against the Vietnam War, and his association with radical figures like Jerry Rubin were, in Nixon's eyes, a direct assault on American values and his presidency. A confidential memo from the White House to the INS read, "Lennon's continued presence in the United States is not in the national interest. Take all necessary steps to effect his deportation." This wasn't just a legal battle, it was a political vendetta. John, meanwhile, was trying to live a normal life, and he and Yoko were deeply in love, navigating the complexities of their public lives and their private struggles. Kyoko, a bright and sensitive 9-year-old, was the center of their world. The idea of her being separated from them, caught in the crossfire of a government vendetta, was unbearable. "They're not just after me," John told Yoko one night, pacing their Dakota apartment. "They're after us. They want to break us up." Yoko, ever pragmatic, understood the gravity. "We fight them, John. We fight them with everything we have." Their legal team, led by the tenacious immigration lawyer Leon Wilds, was overwhelmed. The government's resources were limitless. They dug into every aspect of John's past, every public statement, every association. The drug conviction, a minor offense from years ago, was their primary weapon. But the real reason was political. John's songs, once anthems of love, now became anthems of defiance. Imagine had just been released, its message of a world without borders and governments resonating globally, further infuriating Nixon. "They want to shut me up," John declared in an interview, "but I won't be silenced. Not while there's a war going on, not while people are suffering." He continued to attend protests, to speak out, to use his platform to challenge the very government that sought to deport him. It was a dangerous game of chicken, and the US government, with its vast intelligence apparatus, was determined to win. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. And just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content that's coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. As John fought his deportation, Yoko was embroiled in her own agonizing battle, the custody of her daughter, Kyoko. Kyoko's father, Anthony Cox, had abducted her years earlier, taking her to various religious communes, constantly moving to evade Yoko. The emotional toll on Yoko was immense, and John stood by her, a steadfast stepfather to Kyoko. The US government, in its relentless pursuit of John, began to exploit this vulnerability. FBI agents, under the guise of national security, started to subtly interfere with Yoko's attempts to locate Kyoko. Information that could have helped Yoko was withheld or delayed. Leads were intentionally muddied. The cruel logic was simple. If they could destabilize Yoko, if they could make her desperate, it would weaken John. A broken family was easier to deport. John discovered this insidious tactic through a sympathetic contact within the legal system. He was furious. "They're using a child as a weapon," John raged to Leon Wilds. "They're trying to break Yoko's spirit to get to me." Wilds, a seasoned lawyer, was appalled. "This goes beyond legal strategy, John. This is unethical. No, this is monstrous." But proving government interference in a private custody battle was nearly impossible. The operations were too covert, the agents too skilled at plausible deniability. John felt a new kind of fear, not for himself, but for Kyoko, for Yoko. He saw the toll. The constant uncertainty was taking on Yoko, her sleepless nights, her quiet despair. He knew he had to fight, not just for his right to stay, but for his family's right to be whole. He wrote letters. He made phone calls. He used every connection he had, not for his own cause, but to help Yoko find her daughter. The government's tactics, designed to break him, instead hardened his resolve. He would not let them win. He would not let them destroy his family. The fight for his family became the fight for his life. The government's case against John Lennon seemed impenetrable. Every appeal was denied. Every legal avenue blocked. The deportation order loomed. But then, a crack appeared in the wall. A young, idealistic FBI agent named Mark Jensen, assigned to the Lennon surveillance team, began to feel a profound unease. He saw the resources being poured into the case, the blatant political motivation, the unethical tactics. He witnessed the deliberate interference in Yoko's custody battle. He saw the fabricated reports, the exaggerated claims of Lennon's dangerousness. Jensen was a patriot, but he believed in justice, not political persecution. He knew the risk of exposing the FBI. It could mean the end of his career, even imprisonment. But he couldn't stand by and watch. He began to meticulously document the irregularities, the direct orders from the White House, the coordinated efforts between different agencies, the blatant disregard for civil liberties. He found evidence of the government's interference in Yoko's custody case, a smoking gun that proved their malicious intent. Jensen made contact with a trusted journalist, a man known for his integrity and his willingness to challenge authority. He leaked him fragments of the file, enough to raise questions, enough to spark an investigation. The story broke in a small, independent newspaper, not with sensational headlines, but with meticulous reporting, questioning the provenance of the evidence, highlighting the inconsistencies. It was a tiny crack in the wall of lies. But it was enough. Other journalists, emboldened by the initial report, began their own investigations. Lawyers, sensing a miscarriage of justice, offered their services pro bono. The tide began to turn. The public, initially swayed by the sensational headlines, began to question the narrative. Doubts crept in. John Lennon, seeing the shift, felt a flicker of hope. He wasn't alone. Someone was fighting for him. The government's carefully constructed case began to unravel. The climax of John Lennon's deportation battle came in a packed courtroom in New York. The government, still confident, presented its case, focusing heavily on the 1968 drug conviction. They painted John as an undesirable alien, a man who flouted the law and threatened American values. But Leon Wiles, armed with the information from the whistleblower, was ready. He presented evidence of the government's political motivation. He exposed the direct orders from the White House. He revealed the insidious interference in Yoko's custody battle for Kyoko. The courtroom was stunned. Wiles argued that the deportation was not about a drug conviction, but about silencing a political dissident. He argued that the government was using its power to destroy a family. John Lennon, sitting beside Yoko, watched as the truth slowly emerged. He saw the faces of the government lawyers, their confidence wavering. He saw the judge, his expression growing increasingly skeptical. The government's carefully constructed narrative crumbled under the weight of the evidence. The judge, a man of integrity, listened intently. He heard the testimony of experts, the legal arguments, and the impassioned pleas from John and Yoko. He heard about Kyoko, a child caught in the middle of a political war. In a dramatic turn, the judge ruled against the government. He stated that the deportation proceedings were politically motivated and a violation of John Lennon's constitutional rights. The courtroom erupted. Cheers, tears, a collective gasp of relief. John Lennon had won. He had saved his family from the U.S. government. Against all odds. He hugged Yoko tightly, tears streaming down his face. He had fought the real-life Big Brother, and he had won. The victory in court was monumental, but the battle for Kyoko was far from over. With the government's interference exposed and their deportation threat removed, John and Yoko could now focus all their energy on finding Kyoko. The legal team, now with renewed vigor and public support, intensified their search. John used his fame, appealing publicly for information, offering rewards, and leveraging his connections. The story of the government's interference in the custody battle had garnered public sympathy, and tips began to pour in. After months of relentless searching, a breakthrough came. Kyoko was located in a remote religious commune in California. The reunion was emotional. Kyoko, now a teenager, had been through years of instability and separation, but the love between her and Yoko and her bond with John was undeniable. John Lennon, the rock star, the activist, the rebel, had achieved his greatest victory. He had reunited his family. He and Yoko, along with Kyoko, finally had a semblance of peace. The constant fear of deportation, the shadow of government surveillance, began to recede. John took a hiatus from music, dedicating himself to his family. He spent time with Kyoko, helping her heal from the trauma of her abduction. He focused on being a husband and a father. "They tried to break us," John said in a quiet moment with Yoko. "They tried to take everything away, but they couldn't, because we had each other." The experience profoundly changed John. It deepened his commitment to human rights, to fighting injustice, and to the sanctity of family. He had faced the full might of a powerful government, and he had emerged victorious, not with violence, but with perseverance, legal strategy, and the unwavering support of those who believed in him. John Lennon finally received his green card in 1976, officially granting him permanent residency in the United States. He and Yoko would go on to have their son, Sean, in 1975, creating the family unit he had fought so desperately to protect. The full extent of the Nixon administration's efforts to deport John Lennon only came to light years later, with the declassification of FBI and INS documents. The memos, the surveillance reports, the direct orders from the White House all confirmed the political nature of the campaign against him. Leon Wildes, John's lawyer, became a celebrated figure in immigration law, his victory setting a precedent for political asylum cases. Mark Jensen, the whistleblower, quietly left the FBI, his conscience clear. He never sought fame, content with having done what was right. John Lennon never forgot the battle. It left scars, a deep distrust of authority. But it also forged an unbreakable bond with his family and a renewed sense of purpose. "I know they thought they could scare me into silence," John said in a 1980 interview just months before his death. "But all they did was make me realize what I was fighting for. My family, my freedom, my right to speak my mind." The story of John Lennon's fight against the US government is more than just a legal battle. It's a testament to resilience, to the power of a single voice against a system, and to the profound importance of family. He saved his family from the US government against all odds, and in doing so, he reminded the world that even the most powerful institutions can be challenged, that justice, though sometimes delayed, can prevail, and that love, in the end, is the greatest revolution of all. The classified files of the Nixon administration's campaign against John Lennon are now public, a chilling testament to the abuse of power. But the true victory isn't in the documents. It's in the family that remained whole, the voice that refused to be silenced, and the legacy of a man who fought for his right to be free. The end. If this story about courage, defiance, and the fight for family against overwhelming odds moved you, subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that even in the darkest shadows, truth and love can find a way to emerge. What historical moment made you realize the profound impact of a single voice against a system? Tell us in the comments below.